Happy Monday, folks. We have a big week ahead of us in the stars with Uranus squaring the lunar nodes, and particularly this Sunday, Cancer season begins, as well as the summer solstice. The year is already almost half over, if you can believe it. So that's exciting. And this is also a very relational week because we're starting off with several Venus transits all in a row, some more pleasant, some more challenging. So remember, Venus represents everything relational. Interpersonal relationships, of course, but also your values, your resources and how you spend them, equality and justice, balance and harmony, emotional regulation, even art and creativity. And appropriately, Venus can also represent femmes and queer and trans folks. So happy Pride Month once again, and let's get into these transits for the week. So today is Monday, June 15th, and earlier today, the moon moved into homey, feelsy Cancer. And then we had our first Venus transit of the week with Venus sextiling Uranus from just under 3 degrees of Leo to just under 3 degrees of Gemini. So here, revolutionary planet Uranus is shaking things up in a good way, stimulating us to bring more authenticity and innovation into those relational Venusian areas of our lives that I just mentioned, bringing us more freedom and liberation. It's a good time to try new things in those areas. And this feels particularly appropriate on the heels of last night's new moon in Gemini. Then tomorrow evening, Tuesday, June 16th, brings us another lovely Venus transit as Venus trines Neptune from 4 degrees of Leo to 4 degrees of the fellow fire sign Aries. And this is a dreamy, romantic, sensitive transit that invites a boundless flow of empathy and compassion into our relationships and into our values, reminding us of how interconnected we are, and also brings some creative vision and divine inspiration into our artistic projects. And this is also a great opportunity for spiritual connection, whether that's with yourself, with others, with the cosmos, with any deities you might be working with, etc. Then on Wednesday, June 17th, the moon moves along into vibrant, expressive Leo. And then Wednesday evening brings us by far the toughest Venus transit of this week, with Venus opposing Pluto from 5 degrees of Leo over to 5 degrees of Aquarius. This one means that it's time for radical honesty in the relational areas of our lives. It's time to dig up the dirt, to do some shadow work, to consider what we've locked away in the dark secret trapdoors of our minds and hearts. There might be difficult truths we need to face around Wednesday night, whether in our relationships, our values, our finances, etc., so that those things don't fester and rot if they're left unaddressed. This transit might activate our survival mechanisms, black and white, all or nothing kind of thinking, projection, suspicion, morbidity, just kind of like a sense of doom and gloom. But it's all about processing our pain intentionally so that we can unlock the potential and power that's locked up in them, right? This is about alchemy and transformation. With a Pluto transit like this, the only way out is through. Sometimes you have to increase your stress level in order to actually deal with the things that are stressing you out, right? Pluto is a planet that has to do with healing, but the kind of healing that strives for wholeness, for us to accept and integrate and care for all parts of ourselves, especially the ones that we dislike or reject, and bring some of that Venusian sweetness and love into the equation. So before Wednesday night, you might want to check in with your regulation tools and your healthier, more beneficial coping mechanisms. And let's remember to lean on each other for support, ask for help if we need it, and remember how much art can teach us and uplift and inspire and soothe us. That can be a good resource to turn to if things are getting tough around this transit. Okay, Thursday, June 18th is a quiet day in the skies, giving us some more time to process all of this Venus action that's been happening. And then on Friday, June 19th, the moon enters service-oriented analytical Virgo. And it's not listed on here for some reason, but this is also the day that Chiron, the wounded healer, moves into Taurus after spending about 8 years in the sign of Aries. However, Chiron will only be in Taurus for a few months before retrograding back into Aries, and it won't solidly re-enter Taurus for a long time until next spring. So I'm not really going to go into this right now because we have a couple other big transits left to discuss for this week. I'll definitely tell you more about it in the future. Now, Saturday, June 20th brings us an interesting transit when Uranus will square the lunar nodes. So Uranus is now at 3 degrees of Gemini, and the lunar nodes are a pair sitting opposite the zodiac from each other. So the south node is currently at 3 degrees of Virgo, the north node is at 3 degrees of Pisces. And the lunar nodes tell us about our collective spiritual evolution. So for the last year and a half or so, the south node has been in Virgo, meaning that our collective assignment is to release the shadow sides of Virgo. The self-doubt, guilt, shame, worry, and anxiety passed on to us by capitalism and religious trauma. The judgment, criticism, and perfectionism, which are tools of white supremacy, as well as purity culture, power imbalances, which of course have gotten so absurdly extreme in our society now, as well as servitude and slavery, which very much still exists, whether in US prisons or Congolese cobalt mines, right? So that's the baggage that we're trying to let go of right now. And then we have the North Lunar Node in the opposite sign of Pisces. So what we're moving toward, what we're trying to strive for, the medicine to cure those South Node ailments, is the boundless divine love, empathy, compassion, sensitivity, and interconnectedness of Pisces. The dreams and creative visions of a better world. The understanding that there is so much more than this material three-dimensional reality we perceive around us, that there's so much spiritual power and connection that we can tap into. And that big picture perspective that we're just one little corner of a vast, interconnected, conscious universe. And the reminder that we don't need to actually do or produce anything to have value because all life is inherently lovable and worthy. So that's the assignment, at least for the next month or two until the nodes shift into Leo and Aquarius. Obviously, it's a tall order, right? What we've been working on. But now Uranus is halfway between these two lunar nodes and squaring both of them. So it's shaking things up. It's bringing sudden change and transformation, especially because this whole configuration is happening in mutable signs related to change. So this square on Saturday could come in the form of shocking news, especially with Uranus now in the sign of Gemini. Our Uranian goals of revolution, liberation, community building, etc., are really in conversation with this whole lunar node process. And it makes me think of the kind of infighting that so plagues the political left, right? The kind of critical, judgmental, perfectionist nitpicking and power struggles that we waste so much time and energy on. And so I think a lesson here is that being in community, working together, deconditioning ourselves from a toxic, hyper-individualistic culture, these goals mean that we need to be able to coexist and cooperate with each other, even with people who we might not like very much on a personal level, right? There's a certain amount of tolerance, compassion, and big-heartedness that we have to practice with our comrades as we're all trying to deprogram from the overculture on our own individual Uranian journeys toward freedom and authenticity. So in a nutshell, Saturday is a great day to confront your inner cop or critic, to release some patterns of judgment and perfectionism, and to embrace more empathy and connection and spirituality for the sake of revolution and liberation. Okay, that brings us to Sunday, June 21st. That day the moon enters lovely relational Venus-ruled Libra, appropriately. But more importantly, this is the day of the summer solstice, also known as Litha or midsummer. It's the longest day and the shortest night of the year, so it's the peak of the summer sun's light, and it's the turning point as we slowly shift back into the darker part of the year. This tends to be a day of revelry and celebration, gathering and feasting with loved ones, connecting with nature, and just enjoying the season. And astrologically, the summer solstice always coincides with the start of Cancer season as the sun moves out of Gemini and into the sign of the Crab early that morning. And after the fast-paced, curious, chaotic energy of Gemini season, Cancer season is a more restful time. We tend to turn inward toward our hearts, our feelings, our deep inner emotional world, and the fertile waters of imagination and creativity. We tend to focus more on our home spaces, both internally and externally, and on our closely bonded, committed relationships, especially our families, whether blood or chosen. It's still Pride Month, y'all. It's always Pride Month in this house. What are we talking about? But Cancer is a sign that has to do with roots. So maybe you're exploring your lost spiritual lineages or working with ancestors if you're into that, for example. This is also a great time to connect to the land that you live on and in and with. Cancer is a sign of healing, caring, and nurturing and tending. So it's a great time to turn that energy toward yourself, your loved ones, your community, and the place that you inhabit. Appropriately, right after the sun moves into Cancer on Sunday, it'll form a sextile to Chiron, the wounded healer, now at 0 degrees of Taurus. So this is just a lovely way to kick off Cancer season that really helps to stimulate more healing. We can't fully heal or overcome or forget all of our wounds, but we can tend to them, care for them, nurture them. We can learn healing wisdom from them that we share with others. And we can build bridges of compassion and connection that strengthen our relationships, our communities, and the world. So that seems like a perfect note to end on for this very relational kind of week. Happy summer solstice, everyone. Next time you see me, I'll be in Sweden visiting my family, dancing around a maypole and skinny dipping in the ocean for midsummer. So I'm excited for that. Wishing you a lovely summer solstice. That's all for this week's astrological weather report. I'm Alice Pope. Logan, back to you.